I mean, we got a lot to get into, so I'm
Let's
gonna
do
just
it.
jump into it if
Dig
you're
in.
good, because I want to start with last night, and not even from the on-screen perspective, because look, to say you handled what happened with Grace like in the moment would be an understatement. You have a right to feel how you feel after you miss out on $1 million, but I think the way you spoke about, your own game and propped up Ken's at the same time is so incredibly admirable. I'm curious though, obviously you watched it back last night. I know you were surrounded by such a great support system, but what was it like to rewatch that moment, especially now given maybe some more like coloring as to how people were feeling about you throughout the season?
Yeah, it was tough. Honestly, when people ask me that, it's like I always say like you can feel a lot of emotions at once at the exact same time. So, it was pretty hard to watch back, I'm not gonna lie. It was, it just felt heavy. It felt like I was reliving the exact moment. Or, especially watching Final Tribal, just like knowing exactly what's coming was really tough. At the same time, I am very proud and grateful for the experience. But no, I mean it sucked. There's a big part of it that sucked. Um, so it was a lot at once. But yeah, I did have a great support system. They were there to cheer me up and gas me up. So that was awesome. But and luckily I've had about a year to get ready for this moment. But certainly reopens the wounds a little bit.
Well, listen, I don't want to dig further into the wounds, but I feel
Let's
like
do it.
we must at
Let's
this
do it.
point. Well, I
Yeah.
mean, I want to start with obviously, surprises abound when it came to this final vote with the record number of people that ended up swapping things. So when the dust settled,
Yeah.
what's going through your head as the votes are coming in? What did you think the count would be before Jeff brought back the urn? And which jury votes, I would imagine maybe outside of Maria being the obvious, surprised you the most?
Yeah. So it was actually interesting. There was an interesting moment where, Final Tribal ends. We just all gave our closing statements, and there's this like 10 to 20-second like jury commiserating. They're all like whispering to each other, and I was like, "Whoa, what's going on
Live
there?"
tribal, baby.
And so I was obviously, watching like what's going on very intently, and I saw certain people, like nodding to each other, things like that. And then there was a moment where Liz even went, they can't do that. Like, what are they doing? Which I didn't know. I don't know any of what they're saying. And Jeff was like, "That's the game," whatever. Um, and I actually saw Maria like nodding in agreement with certain people, and I was like, "Okay, that's like my lockdown vote." So like, I'm glad she's like, nodding with other people. So honestly, I did feel good, and there were a couple moments in Final Tribal that didn't make the air that I was like that were like I thought were pretty big moments for me in terms of like outlining my strategy and
Hmm.
the game I played. So I did honestly, I didn't allow myself to think it the whole game, but like when Jeff was walking down with the votes, I thought I had a really good shot at winning. Um, and just based on all of that. And so I don't know if I have a guess for the exact count, but I did think I may have narrowly edged it out. Obviously, it was the narrow flip side of that. Um, but I don't know. It's hearing to people's explanations. I guess is somewhat in line with what I expected. I didn't actually get to watch the after show much, but
You lived it, so
yeah. So I remember, Hunter and Soda basically gave their reasoning for voting for me, which was basically, and I hesitate to use the word strategy because social game is strategy, right? But
right.
I'll call it gameplay, like moving, actually determining vote outs, control over the game. I think I tended to get more of those votes, people who considered that their biggest factor, and maybe lost some of the votes that were, like Q on the money, Maria on, like identifying with starting a family or seeing fire in someone's eyes. So that's sort of how I started to think about it in terms of how it ended up breaking down. So I think I was right to assume that maybe the jury credited me most with my game, but didn't quite see that a lot of jurors wouldn't be voting that way.
You talk about things that made the cutting room floor for Final Tribal Council, because at least from my perspective, it felt like we saw a couple times last night, like, you look defeated or like in your own head, especially when Kenzie was talking. But to your point, it seemed like you had a reasonable amount of confidence that you had
Yeah.
edged it out. So talk to me about that. What were some of those bigger moments that we didn't see that led you to believe that?
Yeah, so there were a couple. So number one, that I will say, like, I think one of my mistakes going into Final Tribal is I told myself I didn't want to come off as arrogant or cocky, and didn't want to. So I did have sort of like a passive demeanor on at Final Tribal. So
Mm.
that I'd say that's more what it was, but or that's just like my resting face. I don't know. Maybe with like all the weight that came off, it looked very sad.
Yeah, 14% wears well on you.
Yeah, yeah, it's crazy. But so wait, what was the question again?
Oh, about the well, like
Okay,
what did we
what
not
moments?
see?
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah, yeah. So there were a couple. I think I just explained my game in a lot more detail. So, talking about the perception that I was like, Maria's jester or whatever, as Kenzie called it, which I guess was potentially, jurors were thinking that. But I think I very much dispelled that at Final Tribal, like much more than, just my last answer to Soda's question. I outlined because really my whole strategy was, as we were saying, options, the Kim Spradlin strategy. But um, it really started at the final 10 vote where I was moving against Maria because it started to come into my head, this whole idea of credit. Maria saying she wanted credit for the TIFF blindside, and uh, you know, Kenzie being all up in arms about getting her number one out, things like that. So the tip vote didn't really or Hunter vote didn't really happen, in my opinion, how they showed it on TV. But I wanted to keep Tiff in the game for next time, and then sort of set that up as Maria's downfall. So I wanted to basically let her walk over the landmine of like getting the sole credit for that move. And they showed it a little bit, where I go to Kenzie immediately after Tiff is voted out. Venus was actually also down there. And I was like, going after Maria a lot harder with both of them than like they even showed, and really blowing her threat level up. And so like I had many threads to talk about for like a long time in the game where I was very much doing my own thing against Maria. So, and I talked about that a lot at Final Tribal, and I think that's ultimately what got me the votes that I did.
Mm.
So yeah, that's what I would say.
So yeah, let's stay obviously on this Maria train because listen, one of the most successful duos in the game, but it was only a matter of time in Survivor 46 before number ones turn on each other. So
Our whole deal, yeah.
talk to me about how well you two worked together. What was sort of the secret sauce of that? And then I would love to know from a timing perspective, did you always anticipate taking out Maria at some point, or was it to your point getting to like that final 8 vote where you're like, oh, I can't go to the end with her?
Yeah. So yeah, I mean, we did work well together. I would say we had a lot of trust.
Mm,
It was really interesting. We did trust each other a lot in the game. It By the same token, I think we did see the game very differently,
mm,
and at least like who to work with and like who to trust and what was a good strategy to get to the end, which is ultimately I think why I started to put things into place to diverge from her. Um, so just for an example of the difference, when she got into the six and was telling me about the six, and I was invited in,
mm.
to this glorious alliance, she was like all hyped about it, and I was like, this kind of sounds like it sucks. Like, what are we talking about here? Also, I'm like the substitute, so that's like lower than the bottom of this alliance, and they just voted out someone, so I just saw it a little bit differently, and I think that's sort of where I started to at least put my brain to work of it, not necessarily putting words into action, but about, maybe I need to play a little bit differently than her. Because it felt like I was having to sway her a lot into what I wanted to do. And I think when you do that enough, it's gonna diverge naturally. That's to say we obviously had a great relationship out there all the way to when she left the game. So um, very strong strategic relationship despite all of that. So yeah.
So let's go from strategic to personal there. How have things been? Because there was that conversation on the boat, ominously, right? Where you're like, we'll be in each other's lives. Uncle Charlie is here to stay.
Yeah.
I would imagine, though, you might feel a certain way when, you realize that this person could have been the vote to lose you out on $1 million. How have things been the past, near year since you've left the island?
Yeah, it's really interesting. Honestly, I think up until the last couple of days, I would say it's like, had a pretty good friendship. As good as you can get. I still think it never would be the same as it would have been. It's a pretty heavy thing. We've obviously talked about it quite a bit, but uh yeah, literally in just the past couple days, she sent me a text about what she was going to say at her exit press, and it was totally inconsistent with everything we've talked about for a year and everything I've heard and everything I heard from Pondi and everything she said at the after show. And that definitely stung a lot. So it just I was like, and there's been a lot of switching up in terms of her reasoning, and I've given her a lot of grace, including her telling me that she regretted voting for Kenzie weeks after the game, and then telling me after that that she couldn't have any regrets, so she didn't regret that anymore. And all through that, still did my best to understand, and be a good friend. But just the last couple of days, I think it's just a little too deep, and not going to put the effort into that relationship just the same. So
Mm.
no ill will towards her at all. I don't want any internet ill will towards her, but in terms of our relationship, we don't have to be friends. I don't dislike her, but and it definitely won't be what it could have been. So
Well, last thing I want to ask is perhaps on some sunnier prospects with the guy that you did sit next to in the final three, because let's
yeah,
talk Dumb
yeah.
and Dumber for a second. I mean, it's interesting. You started the season being like, I'm confident in my strategic skills, not necessarily in my social skills, but from our perspective, it seemed like Ben was kind of like that gateway for you of like, hey, I'm going to sort of show off my own unique qualities being next to this guy. And it blossomed into this really fascinating, beautiful friendship. Talk to me about how that ended up developing from day one to day 26.
Oh man, it was awesome. I wish that storyline sort of continued into the post merge, because if anything, it only got stronger. Ben and I were super tight, not just on a friendship level, but we strategized together a lot.
Mm,
Ever it was really right after the Tim vote, Ben was like really down in the dumps. I don't know if there's a secret scene where basically
yeah.
Leah confronts him and he was really upset. And I went and sat with him in the water for a while, and really after that, I gave him a pep talk. I was like, Ben, like get your head in the game. Like we got a lot of game to play, and from then on, we were like strategizing very tight all the way to the end of the game. To the point where I would say he was like almost equally my number one. Yeah, to quote D, my other number one. So that was a super tight relationship that I had, and we just had so many fun moments too. They show Kenzie a lot with Ben and his panic attacks, but so honestly, one of my favorite moments was literally the last night out there. We were on the beach, and Ben had woken up with a panic attack, and just do whatever you can to cheer him up. And I was fireman carrying him on my shoulder, running up and down the beach, yelling Lord of the Rings quotes because we both like Lord of the Rings. So that's just one example of the shenanigans that we got up to. But there was a whole lot more. We had a lot of fun, and yeah, he's a great guy and a better player than people give him credit for.
Amazing. Well, man, I'm so happy that we both made it there and back again from Fiji to here and to
Absolutely.
get to watch you, play the game. And obviously, it's far from an ideal outcome for you. But again, I can't speak highly enough about the way your headspace coming out of this is so admirable and something that I know is probably hard for you to work through even, nearly a year later. And it's understandable. But to Jeff's point, I think it speaks to who you are as a person, and I'm sure the support that you've received as well, not only last night but the past 13 weeks has truly shown, Charlie. This was such a great time getting to watch you do this and have so much fun over the season, because then it reflected on how much fun we got to have you watching as well. It was such a great time.
It was awesome. I'm glad the season ended up turning a corner. People really enjoyed it, and thanks for saying that, Mike. I really appreciate it.
Of course. Well, I wish you nothing but the best. Get some rest. All the
Yes.
best to you and Judy and your family. And it was truly enchanted to meet you and talk with you, Charlie.
Thanks, Mike. Full
Um,
circle.
there we go. All
Look
right. You
out.
have a good one,
Yeah.
man.
Yeah, you too.
Bye.